Hi everybody, it's Az here from Heal vs Babyface. The video that I'm going to bring you today is my little jaunt in the Mogu'shan Palace, which is one of two new dungeons that have been introduced to the beta servers for the upcoming World of Warcraft expansion, Mists of Pandaria. Now, so far we've had two dungeons, which have been the Temple of the Jade Serpent and the Storm Stout Brewery, and both of these dungeons have been face roll dungeons. They've been very easy to get through. The mechanics for the boss fights aren't particularly difficult. It's just dodge here, jump there, don't step in that. All the typical kind of World of Warcraft rules of engagement, so to speak. Now, this dungeon looked as if it was going to start down the same route. The trash in the foyer, the opening area, is very, very easy and burnt down very quickly. It was started off in groups of 2, and then we moved into this area and it was a group of 4, but they still went down very, very quick. One thing that I did discover, which I was thrilled about, is that Rain of Fire is no longer a channel spell. Rain of Fire acts as a standalone AoE DPS. So all you do is you click Rain of Fire, you move the ring to where you want the Rain of Fire to fall, and then you just release, and it will be like an instant spell from there onwards, which will allow you to get on with your rotation. So that's going to significantly improve my AoE DPSing instead of just using Harvest Life in the future. So I'm very happy about that. Now, Zing, the Weapon Master, is actually the end boss and the main boss to this dungeon. And he starts off by shouting at us and then tells one of these 3 warlords to have a crack and each take their turn to knock us down. The mechanics of these boss fights are very, very simple. Hyan, which is the unstoppable, the first one, he does a meteor, which if it hits you for 75,000 damage. It's going to drop on me anytime now. So be careful to move out of that. He also does a conflagrate spell, which is how it used to operate for a warlock, which makes you stunned and wander around, and also does 20 to 25k damage on a tick as well. So your healer has to be slightly aware of what's going on, but nothing to really worry about. Now, Kuai the Brute is the second of the 2 bosses, and he brings a pet in, which is Mushiba, his little lion or tiger, whatever you want to call it. It's JD and it's Chinesey. And what we did is we focused our energies on the pet first to burn down the pet, and then we moved on to Kuai itself. Now, the pet does an interesting little attack, like it did, like you just saw. It pounced on me, and then it starts to tear away. And if the healer again isn't on their metal, then it can do a significant amount of damage. So they just have to be aware at all times. But our healer was and did very well. Kuai then just does like a frontal stun. If you get caught in that, it will deal some brutal damage and it will stun you, but nothing again too massive. But it's telegraphed, so you've got plenty of time to move out. And then the final one is a spellcaster, Ming the Cunning, not to be confused with Ming the Merciless. It's got nothing to do with Flash Gordon. Now, this is where the dungeon started to take a wee bit of turn for the worst. Everything seemed quite simple so far. We'd had some very simple trash, and then we got onto the first bosses. It was one of 3. We just had to quickly work out the mechanics. No drama. And they're all going down very, very neatly. Everything seemed fine with the world. It takes us about 15 minutes to leave this room after this boss fight. And I'll explain why. Once we manage to get Ming to concede, these 3 warlords come together and they start arguing with each other. This then instigates a massive brawl with everybody in the room. Now, at the end of this room, there is an exit, but this exit is barred by a cloud of smoke. So it looked like we had to clear the room out for this cloud of smoke to disengage for us to move on. Now you can see the massive brawl taking effect. This isn't the case. All you have to do is just let them get on with the fight and move down this staircase that we've just walked down. That is it. So we spent 15 odd minutes, 10 to 15 minutes in that area just trying to look for an exit, what to do. So we were fighting and fighting and fighting. So a little bit of a ball ache, but it was discovered at the end, but it wasted a significant amount of time. So that's something Blizzard really have to look at. It wasn't telegraphed where we're meant to go. In actual fact, it was very misleading where we were meant to go. But we've moved on now. And from this point onwards, the trash suddenly gets a whole lot tougher. There's two mobs here. Now, these two mobs have these two shields on them. And one shield mitigates melee damage, and the other shield mitigates spell damage. So you can see my Chaos Bolts normally hit for between 100 to 130k, but they're only hitting these guys for 67 because he's absorbing a lot of that with that shield. But it's okay. Once you've taken one out, it's pretty easy to take the other one out, but you have to really target the one that doesn't have the shield active, which we managed to do when we come across a second bunch of them and worked it out a little bit better second time round. But the aesthetic of the dungeon has now also changed quite significantly. We've been in these huge rooms with lots of colour and lots of vibrancy about them. Now it's taken us down into the dingy, dark areas. It's very water-based almost. There's lots of blues, but murky blues, and there's these lizard men which kind of give you the vibe of some sort of water-based creatures. That said, the next lot of trash is actually quite confusing. Now, apart from these two guys that we have at the top here that have a mechanic that needs interrupting and are worthwhile trash, they work in unison with each other. We single target one, burn it down, make sure that we get the interrupts on, and then we move on to the second one. Moving on then towards the boss, we just seem to get non-elite trash in dribs and drabs. And yes, it's not difficult to kill. They only take a couple of hits and they're down. But there's just no necessity for them to be there whatsoever. You might as well just let us run now down to the bottom of the stairs and start to initiate a fight with the two elites that are down here. Then the non-elites can start piling in and joining in on that fight. This is just almost like a delay tactic, which is non-necessary at all. And as you can also see, they're only dropping 4 experience points and they're spawning on a regular basis. So really, what is the point in having them? There isn't whatsoever. Please just let us get to these two elites, then start throwing them in and add them as an interesting mechanic to these big ads here. That way we think, well, okay, we're getting a lot of ads coming in, let's group them all together, make sure the tank picks them all up, then we can do some AoE, get them all burnt down. Then an added annoyance to this section was some of them were actually bugged, we couldn't attack them, they kept coming up evading, and then they would move into a better position, and they would still evade. So it got slightly annoying. Then they'd move themselves out of the evade, and then we could attack them. And in the end, we ended up just pushing our way down to the boss itself, and that stopped the spawning of the ad. So, unnecessary, to be quite honest with you, Blizz. Really unnecessary. Now, this boss proved to be slightly more interesting. We have a boss here, and we have 3 ads. This is almost what I'd call a typical old school boss fight with Blizz. Now, we've CC'd one completely out of the fight, and we've got the other 2 together, and we're burning down one very quickly. Now, another ad's going to start coming in now while we keep that one CC'd, and we're going to switch our attention to this. So it's one of those good old-fashioned fights where it's leave the boss alone to start with, move on to the ads, take care of them, burn the ads down, and then you can focus all your attentions on the boss. Not particularly difficult, but this isn't the difficult boss fight, that's the one at the end. But it was nice to see some CC back in the game, and it was done very cleanly. I know it doesn't look difficult, but it's been made to look very easy by the way that we've kept the ads very much under control throughout the whole fight. And then when the final ad has gone down, we can now focus all our attentions onto the boss, which is a very nice and simple way to burn down. So far, no loot has been introduced to this dungeon, and only loot in certain areas in the other dungeons. So there's nothing for me to show you loot-wise, which is a little bit of a shame. Blizz have put up a blue post saying, yes, there isn't any loot at the minute. That is purposeful. We haven't added it, and it is something that we will do later on. But it is nice just to see the mechanics of the fight and, like I said, to see where we can spot any faults or problems, which are going to come very apparent very soon when we move on to the final boss. Now, I have noticed there is a bit of a problem, you may have seen, with getting upstairs. For some reason now, when you try and get upstairs, you can get yourself stuck. So you have to keep jumping and jumping and jumping. I don't know when that happened, but never mind. We're going back up to the palace now, and back up to those lush red colours, and we're moving on to the final boss. Now, the final boss was tough. Oh, look at that. You're hurting me, David. Nice bug. Anyway, when we came to the final boss, we ended up wiping twice before we killed it. And I'm going to show you the kill fight where we actually took it out. But it is far from pretty. It is really, really messy. But that's because the fight is exceedingly difficult. Suddenly we've had a dungeon where there's been some interesting boss fights with the first one, and then we've had the nice mechanics, CC mechanics of the second one, where we've kept the ads under control, and then we've taken out the boss, and then we get this boss fight, which is just absolutely obscene. I've never seen a boss fight like it in a dungeon, and it almost felt like we were actually doing it as a level 90 heroic. That's the sort of vibe that you got from the mechanics, but you'll see why, and it's very, very interesting. The healers have to be absolutely on top draw. The DPS have to really mind where they're stood, what's around them, what's going on, and if they have any mechanics which reduce damage or heal themselves, they've got to implement them. And the tank has to make sure that he avoids all the crap which starts throwing around everywhere, as well as tank the boss, which is hitting like a truck, and avoiding lots and lots of things which are going to start becoming apparent very, very soon. But we're now moving into the final room, so a nice, quick load of trash, and then we fire these 4 tigers or lions that come down, and we disperse them. So we thought, right, okay, we've got a great big space here to fight the boss, which is always nice when you're DPSing, because there's plenty of places for you to move, get out of the way of stuff. The tanks drop dead. Whoops. And we thought, okay, this seems pretty good. Needless, little did we know we're going to be stuck in this room for about 25 minutes. Back and forth, wiping, coming back, wiping, coming back. Now, Zin the Weapon Master has certainly earned that name. You'll see on the right-hand side, my armour is in all kinds of trouble at the moment. And if you read the chat log to the left, you might get an idea of some of the mechanics which are going to come up. You can see all the skeletons as well. Zin the Weapon Master has lots and lots and lots of mechanics for this fight. Loads of them. He has these weapons which start wandering in from the racks on the side, and what they do is they put a ring of fire around somebody, and once that ring of fire is complete, that ring of fire then explodes for huge damage. There is also traps on the floor, which these spinning weapon traps. And if you let yourself get hit by these spinning weapon traps, they'll not only hit you quite hard, but they'll also knock you away as well. And then on top of that, these daggers have started to fly out from the mouths of the statues on the walls, and they absolutely tear you apart. A single dagger does 30k's worth of damage, and look how quick they're coming out. So if you get hit by 3 or 4 of them, you are in a big world of hurt already. Now, we lost one of the DPS. I brought him back up, but we lost him again. And just to compound matters, there are now little arrows, little darts being fired from every single corner of the room. They are going everywhere. So the damage at the minute is insane. Absolutely insane. I decided actually to stop using my direct damage spells and try and do some damage mitigation and healing spells when I realised that everyone was dropping, and we thought we're going to wipe again because the healer goes in a second and it's just myself and the tank left over. So there I am just drain tanking for dear life, and then I realised if I can just get a burning ember active, I can quickly fire off a quick heal on myself, which allowed us to stay alive long enough to kill the boss. Now that was a ridiculous fight, but jolly good fun. So guys, this was Mogu'shan Palace. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please do like, comment and subscribe to my channel. There'll be more coming up soon. My name's Az. The channel's Heel vs Babyface. Take care everybody, and bye bye.